Here we are again at the back entrance of Holden. Every time I think of coming somewhere else, I just keep coming back to this because I just don't want to be anywhere else right now. Like this, the peak of summer, the insects chittering away, which I don't know if you can hear them, and the open fields here, the vistas of the hills. Like, this is sort of where I like to be. And so maybe it's not a lot of variety, but I just decided to come here again today. And since a lot of what I'm doing anyways is talking and contemplating, or whatever you want to call this, the backdrop doesn't matter as much, I don't think. This isn't a nature video channel, I suppose. It's definitely something different than that. There's plenty of those. There's so many nice places. I still want to take everyone, but it's, when I just want to come for a walk and slow down and contemplate, think, or not think, this is what comes to mind. And I just don't like wasting a single day, where I don't come here. And so here we are. Enough of that. We are where we are, and let's take it from there. And I've been thinking a lot lately about beauty and joy, probably because I'm surrounded by it here. And maybe we've been focusing on some of the negative things. I don't know if you want to call it negative, but some of the darker sides of life, the things we do wrong, right? Like, not wrong, but the thinking always occurring and sort of getting in the way of seeing truth and beauty. And that's one way of looking at it. But the other way, I think, is just to directly jump right into the beauty of life and seeing that, and the joy that seeing can bring. And I think that's what I thought about, or what occurred to me. I guess I don't know where it came from, is to talk about seeing the beauty of life is joy. That phrase came to me as I was driving here, and thought that's probably what I'll title this video, and we can go into that. It's something, it's not a conclusion, it's something to explore. And I think it's good to sometimes come in with, what is it we want to explore today? What do we want to inquire into? And take it from that position, not knowing where it's going to lead, or what we're going to find along the way. Just like if you were walking a trail that you didn't really know, or that you've been to for the first time, you don't really know where it's leading you and what's around the corner. And that very unknown brings a certain amount of joy. The unknown can be joyful, not knowing something. And I think that's also where beauty lives, in the unknown. The known is what it is, right? You've been there, you've done that, and there's a certain static nature to it. It has happened, it is a fact. But what's happening now is new. In this moment, us walking here through this field on this nicely mowed pathway, so we can walk through it, which allows us to walk through it, right? Otherwise we'd have some difficulty walking through all the tall grass. So this also brings back what I talked about the other day, the juxtaposition between sort of, I guess, I don't know, the wildness of nature, and also, I don't want to say the taming of nature, but it's kind of what came to mind, of human beings, that they tend to interact with nature in such a way as to make it beneficial to them, have usefulness or utility. And there is a usefulness or utility to this path right now that was made by humans, that cuts through the field. I think it represents a good balance, though, between nature, leaving nature to be nature, while also providing what human beings need to live. And there can be a harmony to that, and I think this is a good example of a harmony, because this trail isn't doing any harm to this field. There's plenty of open field here. We're not disrupting it. It's still allowed to be and do what it's intended to do, or what it does. And yet the trail gives us the ability to walk through it and enjoy that beauty without doing too much harm to it. And I think that's it's a good, maybe a lesson. I don't want to use lessons, but it can be a lesson to living. How can we live a different way in harmony with nature without destroying it? If we were to mow this entire field down, we would destroy it. So we see that as an example of where we wouldn't want to go, what we wouldn't want to do. Some people might want to do that. They might want to mow this down and build a condominiums with parking lots on it. But I think that desire to just build or mow over or destroy sort of the naturalness of nature is what is getting us into some bad situations in the environment and in the world that we live in. That we need to leave a lot of it natural, the way it is, and not interfere, not plow everything over, because then it's like humans become a virus taking over the planet, destroying everything else for its own needs, which is what parasites do. They sort of take over and cause harm to the host, and maybe they don't care because it's just their own survival that they care about, and there isn't a symbiosis. There's other organisms like the bacteria that live in our intestinal tract that form a very beneficial relationship with this body. Other organisms. This is also worth exploring, because when we talked about what are you and who are you, and you think of yourself as being a separate identity, but there's other living things within you right now that form a symbiosis, that have different genetic structure, these bacteria, that if they're not there, your body doesn't function normally. And everyone that takes antibiotics knows that, because the antibiotics can kill that beneficial bacteria in your intestinal tract, and then people take probiotics to try to replenish that loss of that beneficial bacteria. That bacteria is not part of your body in the sense that it has separate genetic structure. It could be considered an organism that could survive separately on its own. It doesn't have an exclusive relationship with a human being, a human body, and I guess those are ways you could say that it's different from you. But in a sense, every human being has that. It's part of our ability to live. So in that sense, it is part of the human body, because the normal functioning of the body requires that. So it's just an interesting thing to think about. And it's true in many ways. There's other organisms, if we really understood the interconnectedness that we have with other living things in this planet, and that if you destroy any part of that ecosystem, you disrupt the entire ecosystem. And this is why I went down that path, because if you were to destroy all the trees or all the flowers, you disrupt the entire ecosystem of which you are a part. You're destroying yourself, whether you realize it or not. And and when you see that interconnectedness with all things, then you don't think about, we have to conserve nature just to be beautiful. You understand you are nature. You are part of this world, and that world needs to be preserved holistically, not only a part of it, because there is no part. And we got to that too, that idea that we are separate from nature, separate from the rest of the world, separate from each other, is illusory. And if we live according to that illusion, harm will be done to not only this planet, but to ourselves as creatures that live on and in and intimately connected to every part of this planet. So if we don't see that relationship that we have with nature, that this is required, and it's you have to expand your awareness, right? To not be just this individual that you think you are, but an integral part of everything. And not using words, but seeing that through insight. Seeing that truth, that unwavering truth, that we are all part of this entire system, and we have to take care of the planet because the planet is us. And it's not, and this is what I think separates maybe people who see that from people who don't. It is literally a seeing. It's a seeing of the truth. You see that truth or you don't see that truth. And if you don't see that truth, you continue to act selfishly. You don't care about destroying the environment or polluting the air or the water, or strip mining and destroying natural beauty just because you want to. There's some desire driving you, some personal desire for wealth or to meet your needs. And if we don't find that harmony with nature, we will destroy nature, we will destroy ourselves, and take a good chunk of life with us when we wipe ourselves off of this planet. Now, I guess that's not what I intended to start talking about, right? I guess we're back to some of the negative things, but it's the truth, right? The truth. We can't walk around and just say, oh, how wonderful everything is, without understanding or appreciating the entire truth of things and what that is. And that truth contains that as well. But the beauty is there as well. And that's what we're talking about, is beauty. The beauty's all around us right now. The beauty's always around us. It's just whether we see it or not. And that only depends on whether we pay attention or we don't pay attention. And right now I'm paying attention. There's a little dragonfly that just landed on this plant reaching up. And, showing the harmony of everything. And not all that harmony is pleasant, right? And in that regard, I should mention that, I got stung by a yellow jacket yesterday while I was mowing my grass in the front yard, which I do infrequently. I tend to leave it wild as much as possible because I like the flowers, the bees to have access to the clover. I think it's called Dutch clover. There's a lot of that in my yard, and I even mow around that anyways. If there's a patch of Dutch clover, I don't mow it down because I see lots of bees out there enjoying that pollen from the clover, and I don't want to disrupt that. And this is what I see that other people don't see, right? A lot of people they just want their lawn to look like their neighbor's lawn, nicely mowed and green, full of chemicals to destroy all the natural plants, and just, make it look uniform and, to me, dead. When I see a perfectly mowed lawn like that, I just think it's a waste of space, because hardly anything lives in that monotonous green field, But on the flip side, I let my lawn get a little wild, and in that wildness, yellow jackets have found a comfortable little home in my front yard. So it goes with the territory, right? That in the keeping of the wild, you also bring in all the elements that one may consider to be undesirable, along with those that one considers to be desirable. I really don't make that distinction. I like it just being what it is. And I'd like to plant more wildflowers in my yard. And I've been looking into that a little bit to kind of make it more of a natural field rather than the well-cared lawn that everyone wants. And I long ago stopped dumping chemicals into it. But at one point I did. When we first moved into our house, I did what everyone else did. I hired a lawn care company to come by and dump chemicals into the lawn to keep it looking like everyone else's lawn, until I just kind of woke up one day and said, why am I doing that? Those chemicals are not safe. Regardless of what they tell you, you look into it a little more deeply, you will find that it's not. And it's expensive, it's not safe, and it produces a very boring looking lawn, as far as I'm concerned. One that isn't sort of in harmony with nature, because it requires so much work. Like, what's in harmony with nature requires no work, right? You can be at ease. You're not constantly fighting the forces of nature. You're letting nature sort of emerge on its own in its natural state, which says a lot about us too, because when we force ourselves to fit a pattern that we think is ideal, we're fighting against nature. When we allow ourselves to be free, right, and wild in some sense, what we were meant to be emerges naturally without you dictating it. And that newness is beautiful, because that is also creation. That in every moment something new is coming about is creation, which is another word that I guess we can bring into this whole thing, because we misuse that word a lot of times when we say we as human beings create a work of art. That's not really creation, mostly, because we have an intention. That art is sort of a product of human thought, and creation is something that isn't driven by thought. It's something that emerges from some other place, perhaps this cosmic mind that we've talked about, or this supreme intelligence or universal intelligence, that is always there operating. But we get in the way sometimes with our human thought, thinking we're smarter than that universal intelligence that we see all around us. When you let that universal intelligence do its thing without interfering, you're more in harmony with the natural law, right? What is occurring. And so, just to get back to the yellow jackets, that, this is the second time I've gotten stung by being out. Both times I was mowing the lawn, and I guess the first time I thought it was a fluke. The second time I realized that I had just run over a yellow jacket nest that's in the ground. And these guys, we used to call them digger wasps. And I think that was the name that we used when I was a kid growing up. And it was funny because it brought back a lot of memories of me being a kid. And I remember us having these wasps in my parents' front yard. And there was a particular area of the ground that I always avoided, of the yard that I always avoided, because I knew that's where the digger wasps like to be. It was the sunniest spot in the lawn, right in front of where the air conditioner was, my parents' air conditioner. And that was like a yellow jacket community. And if you went over there, you were chancing it. And I got stung a number of times when I was a kid, but I got stung yesterday. And I must be slightly allergic, because my entire left leg, my lower left leg, has swollen up and is itchy. And this happened the first time I got stung, which was more on my ankle of the left leg. My ankle kind of got swollen and red, and I put some aloe on it and got the swelling down. But that was a very itchy, painful thing that lasted at least a couple weeks, and it took a long time to get better. And then what do? I go out and do the same thing again. Definition of stupidity. Doing the same thing and expecting different results. I guess it just didn't occur to me the first time around that there was a nest. And then I went, same spot, I went over, and it was just like clockwork. A little bee came out and stung my my calf, the calf area in my lower leg, and I've been dealing with that ever since yesterday. I took a Zyrtec only overnight, because it was really sort of painful and itching overnight. And I guess, I hope that I don't end up having an anaphylactic reaction. That's what can happen if your whole your system reacts to it. This is the second time I've been stung, and this one seems a little worse than the first one, so I am a little concerned about the allergic reactions. So now I'm trying to figure out what to do with this yellow jacket nest in the front yard. Right now I'm avoiding it. I know kind of where it is. I put a little flag out. But the thought has crossed my mind that maybe I need to take some action to get rid of that nest. I really don't want to, because I don't like killing anything, even things like that. But then I do think that there is a risk, there's health risk to a lot of people, even the dog walkers that go by, to dogs. Like, it should be in another position, not there. What I thought about is maybe I just fence the area off and let it be, and when the winter comes, according to what I found out about this, the yellow jacket nests are gone. Like, they don't keep that same nest next year. And if we can just avoid that area for this summer, and then now next, what happens, I guess, and I don't understand all of this, this is limited knowledge that I have, is that the queen hibernates somewhere in the area, and then in spring will emerge and find another area to start a new nest, often in the similar area if it's hospitable. But then what I thought is, I'll make the area inhospitable, right? Next, a lot of times they like the holes that other animals like moles or whatever have created to start their nest. I can, in early spring next year, maybe fill in all those holes, make sure that, you know, to the best of my ability, I will make it inhospitable to the wasp. Maybe it'll choose another area to go in that isn't right in my living space. So that's the most humane solution that I've come up with. We'll see what happens. But the point of me even talking about this is to bring up the fact that nature has its dark side too, if you want to call it that. I mean, really, it's not a dark side to the yellow jacket. It's protecting its home, just as humans would often find no problem with protecting their home. And they have a right to be on this planet like us. We may consider them highly aggressive, and they are, and harmful, which they are. In this case, you know, having a somewhat severe reaction to this, and hopefully, you know, like, I want to avoid this as much as possible, of getting a severe a systemic allergic reaction, right? But these are all the natural things that occur, right? So in a way, we can't control a lot of this. We can, this is part of nature, part of the wildness that we find ourselves in, and it's not always to our liking. But we have to be very careful when we think about controlling nature to meet our own needs, and not thinking about chemicals we're dumping in the lawn, or insects or animals that we might be eliminating because we find them undesirable. So it's the other side of all this, right? But there's a beauty to it all. And there's even a beauty to the yellow jackets, to their defense mechanisms that they have that keeps them relatively safe. But they aren't, I don't believe they are the ones that, they're not the ones that collect pollen. I think they feed off other bees, if I'm not mistaken, other insects. They're somewhat carnivorous, I guess, in that regard. The clover that I leave in my lawn, that we're seeing a lot of it here too, as we walk, the white little clover, and I'm seeing lots of bees, honeybees, right? Other types of bees collecting that pollen and doing whatever they want to do with it. Which is occurring here, and I'm trying not to step on any of the bees as we move along, trying to be conscious and aware of where the bees are, because we do have a declining bee population, honeybees for sure, and I don't want to do anything dangerous to them, and it's one of the reasons I like to leave things a little more wild, to do whatever my part is to keeping nature functioning and maintaining our harmony and balance with everything else. So that's a little bit of my personal story of my living with nature in my homestead, which does bring me back though to, you know, the beauty of life, right? Which right there is a good phrase to go into, the beauty of life. And we've talked a bit about what beauty is and what life is, and that one of the things that we may not do is appreciate that beauty when we are too wrapped up in our thoughts, in our thinking, in our own personal lives. We miss that beauty and we may not see it, and we may become dark and inward, withdrawn from the world because of certain things happening in the world that we also find dark and dreary. You know, there is a lot of terrible things like wars and other things that are happening, a lot of anger and hatred amongst different types of people in the world right now, which is why more than ever that is a problem that needs to be solved. We could say that this anger and hatred, the way human consciousness currently is, will destroy our species for sure, and probably take a lot of other species with them along the way, unless there is some transformation of human consciousness. And then we may say what will bring about that transformation of human consciousness, because we can't bring it about. Our identity, our little ego, our little bundle of memories that is partial and incomplete cannot bring about that transformation of consciousness, because we're too limited and small. And as long as we stay enclosed in that and near to that center of ourselves as the me, as the self, as the I, transformation will not occur. That's what we've been doing for the thousands of years, tens of thousands, that human beings have been sort of doing this sort of thing. You know, this way of acting and behaving. I don't know when wars started, but somewhere back then, and we've been sort of doing the same thing ever since. The tribalism of the past has now become nationalism, just on a grander scale. We're still fighting. We still have this idea of my tribe, your tribe. My tribe's survival is more important than your tribe's survival. And it's so archaic. It's so barbaric that we live in that world. And you just see example after example of this in our current society, from just how people are acting in my local neighborhood. I mean, I have sort of a police scanner thing. It's an app. I can't remember the name of it, but it gives you snippets of all the occurrences, the crime, you know, when the dispatcher is relaying to police officers. And I was shocked and amazed by how many crimes and how many just, what I would say, disorderly events are occurring. You know, even around where I live. And I guess I just wasn't aware of all of what was happening before. And now I have a new awareness of that. And what it just does is reinforce to me the problem that we are facing as a species, as a humanity. You know, that this problem of anger and hatred is systemic and just permeates through our culture, from the individual level, the household level, the family level. There's many family disputes, family domestic violence, a lot of that I see. Then to the community, where just a person will attack somebody at a store. And then more broadly, you have people who plan, you know, terrorist attacks and killing larger numbers of people, and gang warfare, and just it goes on and on. And that is the truth, right? The truth needs to be seen, that that's what's occurring. And then one naturally wants to say, what can we do about that? Do we just need more police officers? Capital punishment? What is the solution to this? And when you go into it, you see that those things are not the solution. The solution has to come from within ourselves. That every person that is a complete representation, a complete representative of humanity, their consciousness needs to be transformed so that they don't act in these ways, in these selfish, self-centered, destructive ways. You can punish people for crimes, you can lock them away, but it's systemic. It's like a disease that if it isn't corrected, then it will just operate unabated until we're just destroyed, until we just destroy ourselves, just from the inside out. And rather than destroy ourselves from the inside out, we should transform ourselves from the inside out. How do we transform this consciousness so that it is not focused on aggression and hate and pettiness? And I think the way to do that is what we're doing now. It's not by going out and trying to impose some sort of order on society the way in which we see order needs to be imposed, because that also is driven by our limited human thinking. So any idea we have about order, even order in society, or preventing crime or whatnot, is all just originating from our limited ability to see the world, our limited understanding of what the problem is. And we think we can just create more laws, have more enforcers of the law, and somehow that is going to solve our problem. It hasn't solved our problem yet. And you can just have as many laws or rules as you want imposed upon by society. You can have as many enforcers as you want. And then what happens? You become an authoritarian state, right? Or a dictatorship, or where you impose one person's view of order on everybody in that society. And that is not right, because it again sprouts from the misconception of what order is, not really understanding what real order is, not seeing the problem, not going into the problem deep enough to see what it really is, which is where true intelligence and wisdom arise. And we've said before that to solve or understand a problem, you have to go into that problem deeply. And if you see the problem deeply enough, the solution is there. And the problem, right, the root of the problem is always human thought. That this brain that does its thing, and we've talked about the disorder in the brain that leads to very self-centered behavior, is at the root of it all. All these crimes, all these, things that are happening are a result of that. So if we don't go into that, if we don't go into the mind, into the source of the trouble, we'll always be on the outside, superficially trying to solve the problems without ever going deep enough to actually solve the problems. And how do we solve the problem? By going into the problem, by observing the problem, by not imposing our ideas upon the problem, but just watching and looking at what is happening, which is the truth. And from that looking and observing, the solution emerges naturally, not from our limited understanding. So understanding the problem, which requires the silent mind that we talked about before, the mind that can see directly without being without having all the illusions of thought and thinking coming into play, which is what we do now, and then not thinking we have the solution through some process of thought and then imposing that solution, but just every person seeing what is going on in the mind, and then just that, right? Just the seeing. Like, we just need to see more clearly what's happening. And that's all. Not have order be imposed upon us, because the seeing is the doing. And the seeing will bring about a transformation. The seeing of what's happening, the clear seeing of the awareness of the situation, awareness of the trouble that we're in, awareness of that, awareness of the origin of that, the cause of the trouble. And that holistic awareness, not partial knowledge-based awareness or knowledge-based analysis, but holistic, complete awareness of the situation, then something may happen that could solve our problems. We can't imagine that, though, right? Because that would be thought coming into play, imagining a way in which this will unfold, and that we can't do. We can't dictate the solution now. We just have to recognize that it's not going to come through this process of thought. It has to come from somewhere else, from where love and compassion are. And we've talked about love and compassion being the seeing of the whole, arising naturally, not something you cultivate, but something that comes about when the whole is seen. It's all intertwined, right? This intelligence, this cosmic intelligence, whatever you want to call it, the order that needs to arise, the love and compassion that we need for each other, that cannot be cultivated through thought or any practice, but must emerge naturally from the seeing, the insight into the problems. This requires insight. Insight is not something you can bring about through intent, through will, through practice. It's something that happens when one sees clearly. And the only way one can see clearly is to take away all that past conditioning and knowledge that wants to lead us in a particular direction. Because as long as you have that past knowledge, it's going to try to act according to the knowledge. You have these ideas about how things should be, or how things can be better, through your ideology, whatever that ideology is. Take your pick, an infinite number of ideologies, belief systems, religious, political, or social. There's people have tried everything, right? Communism and capitalism and socialism and any other ism you might come up with are ways in which society has attempted to solve this problem, and none have worked. So the first thing to recognize is no system, no ism is going to solve this problem that we're facing. And it is a problem. We're facing a very severe problem, the possible end of our existence. So the only way is for us to understand what it means to see clearly, and then to see clearly. That's the only understanding there needs to be. Not a system of thought, but to put thought in its right place, not as the dominant factor, not as the controller. Thought wants to control according to its past knowledge. But if we see the harm in that, that has only led to more problems, more harm. I mean, think of the thousands of years that has been the way. Every society, every faction, every political, just think of the immensity of it all. It has been tried. Right? We've exhausted almost all possible thought-based systems, and none have worked. None bring about the transformation of human consciousness to the point that things can be remedied. That our society can become harmonious, that humanity can return to something, or maybe it never has been, in a state of true harmony and peace, where there's just understanding of the truth and the whole, and the fact that we are all part of this common humanity. The human mind is not my mind, it's the human mind, and that we all have the same human mind, fundamentally, and the same human body, with slight modifications, very slight. The core of ourself is the same. humanity all suffers the same way. All experience fear, all experience desire, pleasure, joy to a certain degree, happiness, anger, violence. Like, that's in all of us. And that is the common, that is the core, the fundamental part of who we are, the fundamental nature of who we are. So we can't deny that nature. That nature has to be seen for what it is, to see that that is who we are. And that none of these systems have changed that at all. That fundamentally we are still the same inside, despite whatever attempt there has been to impose order or change from the outside. Because the only way to change the inside is through insight, is through seeing what's there, actually, seeing our nature. And in the seeing of our nature, understanding who we are. And then the understanding of who we are, the knowing of thyself, which we talked about before, then brings about a seeing that perhaps, and I say perhaps because this is not a sequence of time that we can dictate cause and effect, right? That if there is this understanding, there's the possibility of insight arising. I always like the analogy, I think it was Thich Nhat Hanh that said you have to, if you're in a cabin, you open your windows to let the wind in, but you can't make the wind come in. But the wind can't come in if you don't open the windows. So this is, I think, a good, even though we don't need it, but a thought-based analogy that says you can open the windows, which would be to free yourself of your conditioning and see what the truth of you, what truth is. But that does not mean the wind is going to come through. That does not mean you're going to gain something or achieve something, because that is determined by the wind, which is blowing according to its own laws and direction, right? That is not under your control. So this insight or whatever, this intelligence may arise, it may not arise. It will not arise as long as the windows are closed. That's one thing we know for sure, which is why the seeing of the disorder in our life is the opening of the windows. Beyond that, there's nothing we can do. We just have to see the disorder in our life, see the problems that are occurring, and that those problems are all caused by this self-centeredness that lives within all of us. Without seeing that, there is nothing that can happen, because we will just continue along this path. And this seeing, one might think, we have so many systems, right? Humans have been around for thousands of years. We've had many people, the Buddha, Jesus, and Krishna, who have all brought some sort of knowledge to this problem. One might be tempted to believe that all we have to do is find that right system. It's all there already. And we just need to find the right system and then belong to that group of people who have that system. But that isn't the truth. The truth is all those systems have simply contributed to where we are now. The division between systems, even just having the fact that you can call Buddhists Buddhists and Hindus Hindus and Christians Christians, the very fact that you can label these groups creates conflict between these groups. That once you have a system, now there is your system and everything else outside of that system, which creates a division. The very labeling of yourself as belonging to anything, as being part of any group or society, whether it's political, religious, social, whatever, creates a division. There's those inside and there's those outside. And it's until we see that, there can't be a system for that reason. That reason, whatever you choose to call that labeling, the categorization, it is thought-based. The very fact that we have a Buddhism, like Buddha didn't create Buddhism. Buddhism was created by all his followers, by all his disciples, by all the people that came afterwards. The Buddha, whatever his message may have been, and we don't even know, because it's 2,500 to 2,600 years ago. We have no idea. There's claims that what is written well, actually, it was not written down, I think, until hundreds of years after. Like there was an oral tradition, and then it was written down later. So what was written down hundreds of years after the Buddha was around. And you have no idea by then what thought could have done with it. With all the humans that lived, the telling and retelling of it, no matter how good their recall was, and even if it was perfect recall, even if it was contemporaneous to when the Buddha was alive, words are imperfect. They may have recorded from the outside what was happening, but they're not getting at the truth that can only be seen directly by one who is open to that. So the Buddha himself would say, be a light to yourself. And most people who are so-called enlightened have always said that seeing truth is something you have to do yourself. It is not something that someone can tell you what it is through any number of words, or even give you a path or process to it. But of course, Buddhism, at least a large part of it, is based on the Eightfold Path, which is a path, right? But how that became that from the initial message of the Buddha, it's just not clear. That could have arose because people always want a system or method. And there was plenty of time for people to create a system from the time the Buddha was there to the time that things were written down. And even after that, things change. So there's no reason to believe, well, that's truth, right? But it will say, every religion says, well, that's the way. There's only one and only way, and our way is the one and only way. That people say that in Buddhism, people say that in Hinduism, people say that in Christianity, which right there should tell you have three different groups of people who all say their way is the way. Well, which way is the real way? How about no way is the way? And that's the realization. That's the truth. It's a scary truth for anyone that is attached to their way right now, because that way has given them security and safety, and believing in that, and at some point, they may have just given themselves over to that, right, through some sort of devotional practice or whatever it is, and said, this is the way, and I'm sure of it, and I'm going to practice this the rest of my life, and that will bring me peace and serenity and all that. But I guarantee you it likely has not. That is not all the practitioners of all these still have the same problems as everybody else, maybe more, and it has not solved the problem. It has only fostered division, created conflict between you and everyone else. You may feel a sense of security by being within that group or system because you belong to something, and then you want to belong to something. You don't want to be alone. We talked about being alone the other day, how important being alone is. To be free is to be alone. That's what it means, to not belong to any system or group, right? That's why alone is a powerful thing, and why alone is not something to be feared. Alone means you are free. Does not mean you are isolated, right? Isolated or solitude is like removing yourself from the rest of society, and out of a reaction to society. Anytime you react, that you contain whatever it is you're reacting to. So if you're reacting to society and you isolate yourself from society because of that, that is a reaction which contains the society that you're reacting to, right? It's not love and true compassion that's arisen. It's a reaction to the negativity that you see in society, and you've removed yourself from that society thinking that's going to solve your problems, but it doesn't solve your problems, because you still have the memory of that society and all the negative things that you thought about that society that pushed you away from it. At its core is why you're isolating yourself. So there's no love in isolation. There's no compassion. Isolation does not bring about love and compassion. To be in society, but to not be a part of society. I think Jesus said to be in this world, but not of this world. And I think, there's truth in that, right? If Christians saw the truth in that, in what the words, not the words themselves. Don't treat the words as truth, but that there's a truth behind the words that can't be seen by adhering to the words, but the words may in some way reflect poorly or weakly some of the light of truth that perhaps the words can evoke an inquiry into the truth that may lie behind the words. I can't say, because I'm not going to say that, but to see the truth itself directly is what there is. And the truth is that to be alone is a powerful thing and a necessary thing for love and compassion to arise, because in that aloneness you are free from all belonging, from belonging to any organization that will separate you from the rest of the world. To alone also, if you just take that word, means all one, right? Alone means all one, and even the spelling of the word alone, if you split it apart, add an L, you get all one, which, by the way, is stamped on every bar of Dr. Bronner's bar soap, which is a very natural, environmentally friendly soap that I use. And that phrase also means a lot, because to be alone means not to be isolated, but to be all, to be everything, to not be a separate thing, but to be everything. And that aloneness, though, allows, there's no separation, because you are free. You don't have to, when you meet somebody, they're not a member of a group or society that is different from the member or group, or the same from the member or from the society that you belong to, because that's how you would see somebody, right? If you are a Buddhist and you meet somebody who's a professed Christian, you see that different lens. I'm a Buddhist, I know what I believe. Here's a Christian, I think I know what they believe. It's different than what I believe. There's immediately a division, a separation between you and that person because of the labels that you have. No matter what those labels are. One may think Buddhism is the best, or the Buddhism is the least of all, but any ism, any way in which you now have separated yourself, you wear certain robes, you have certain practices that you do that other people don't do, that very thing separates you from them. You may try to draw them into your system and say, this is the way, come join our monastery, come join what we are, and you will be free. I mean, that's what every Christian does as well, right? They come to you and they preach and they want you to belong to their particular sect, which is innumerable sects, S-E-C-T-S, divisions of, even Christianity has divisions within it, because people can't agree on what Jesus really was saying. I mean, I don't know how many there are, but there's many different divisions of so-called Christianity, Catholicism. Even within Catholicism, we saw the schism that occurred recently between groups within Catholicism that think they know better than, say, the Pope-centered version of Catholicism. And that it created schism, it caused excommunication, it led to all sorts of fun things that people do when they have their system and you have yours. How about you have no system? Because the only way for love and compassion to arise is no system. We are all human beings. There's no reason to divide us up into groups of any kind. To see every human being as you, the same, not different because of what they believe. And people do believe things. So you can't, the other side of it is to not, because what some people like to do is mock people for what they believe, or tell them how stupid they are for what they believe, or how they're wrong by believing in that. That also is not the way. And by doing that, you're judging, you're casting aspersions, you have opinions which are come from thought. That's not love and compassion. It's not love and compassion to tell someone that what they believe is harmful and they need to stop it and drop it. What one can do is what I'm doing now, which is to go into the truth and say, come with me and we'll explore this together. Instead of me coming and being an authority and telling you how it is, I will help hold your hand in a way. We can walk through the forest, through the trees, walk down this trail and discuss it. Have a dialogue. A dialogue is when two people come together with the same intention, the same energy, and the same wanting to discover truth directly, not me convince you of anything or you convince me of anything. We're not arguing, right? Argument is trying to convince another person of something. To have a dialogue is to discuss something together because you both want to find truth. Not that one thinks they know and wants to be the teacher and teach another. And then you have the teacher and the student. That relationship is also another division. Become your own teacher. Become your own teacher and your own student. But to have a dialogue with somebody can be fruitful because you can talk about, go into, inquire to whatever capacity that words allow you to do, into whatever is the pressing question or problem of the moment. And through that dialogue, perhaps you will see truth together. You will come upon truth through that process. And maybe the dialogue is something more important than the words you use. Maybe it's just the coming together, of two people to find truth or see truth, allows truth to shine through in a way that maybe it wouldn't when we separate ourselves from others and think we know better. I mean, we can think we know better as an individual. We can think our whatever system we belong to knows better. My religion has the truth, and I'm going to tell you what that is. So I'm going to teach you the truth of my religion, and hopefully you'll come along with me. Like, that's not a dialogue. For a dialogue, you have to be free. You have to be willing to change your mind. You have to not come in with a preconceived notion, not come in with a belief system. For real dialogue, you have to leave all that at the door. Leave your past at the door. Leave whatever you think you know at the door, and just walk and talk and explore together. So I'm having a dialogue in some way. I'm not saying I know the truth, because one thing I've said very clearly is no one can know the truth. No one. No single entity, which we call the me, the self, the I, with limited knowledge, that is a bundle of memories, that cannot know truth. So I can't know truth, because nobody can know truth. Truth is unknowable, but you can see it. You can be aware of it. And in an ineffable way, in a way that cannot be expressed in words, but is more powerful than that. Because it goes beyond the words, because the words are just constructs of the mind, of the brain. So just let go of that and see it for yourself. And this is also where beauty comes in, right? Because the seeing of truth is beauty. This is beautiful right now. And if you're constantly in your head, which in some way we've been this entire time, talking and going into things in this analytical way, we miss the beauty around us. And that beauty is the truth that's been calling to us the entire time. The beauty of the fields and the trees and the sky, and of the summer here in Ohio, which is a beautiful thing. All things are alive, has been calling to us the entire time, and we've been talking and not seeing it. So see it. See the beauty of life, and without judging it, without saying this one thing is beautiful, this other thing is ugly. There's beauty to all living things, beauty to all non-living things, beauty all around us that can only be seen when this idea of me ends. Because as long as I hold on to this me that wants me to think about my problems, my thoughts, my anything, right? The word my, the word I, the word self, anything related to that, then beauty can't be seen, because you're only seeing yourself. You're seeing your desires, you're seeing your fears, you're seeing your individual created problems, whatever your small little petty problems of your small little petty life is, as opposed to the immensity of all, the immensity of everything that is there, that is the beauty of everything can be seen when that ends. You can say beauty is when the self is not. When you lose yourself, you don't think of yourself, then beauty is there. You know, that when you see something majestic and powerful, like, well, even like this field of flowers that's amazing and just inexpressible in words, and for a moment you forget yourself. You forget your, whatever they may be, you don't worry about that. And you just see the beauty for a moment. You lose that sense of self temporarily, right? But then it may come back, you know, when you walk away and you're back to yourself, back to your problems, back to your head with thoughts running through it constantly. And so that beauty is momentary. But there is a way, that there is something to that that can help maybe see that beauty, if the me or the self were to end completely and permanently, so that this idea, just lose this entire sense that we are this separate thing that needs to be protected and safe and is fearful of dying and fearful of change and whatever there is. As long as that's there, the beauty can't be seen. But if that ends through insight, not through ending, because there can be no ender, no one that ends, because that one that ends is the me, the ego that needs to end. The circular logic of that should even be clear. That to take action like that, willful action to end something, anything, it can't end itself, right? You can't, the me can't end itself, because in the ending it has power. It simply, that's the illusion, that's the trick though that it wants to play on you. That if you do something, I will give you a path or a recipe or a procedure that will end me. That doesn't even make sense, right? That how can the me create a path or method to end the me? And that's exactly what's happening. With any path, any method, any system, any way of saying, do these things, and the me will end, is just the me's way of continuing. It's the trick. It's like Loki, right? The trickster that will trick you into thinking, sure, I agree with you, the me must end, the me says, and I'll give you the way to end me. But all it's doing is seeing that you're starting to see the truth, and when it gets afraid, right, the me gets afraid of ending and says, I don't want to end, and if they see the truth, that I will end, and so I'm going to give something that's close, or that I think is close, or I will make them believe is close, when in fact it's as far away from the truth as it could be. But this sense that I've now found a way to end the me, and it's glorious, and this is the way. And all it's done is that now the me rests assured that it persists even longer, because it has fooled you into thinking that there is a way to end it in that way, any thought-based way. Whereas the real ending of it is simply to see it, to see all its tricks as well, to see Loki, to see the trickster that's there, that will try everything to hang on to that identity. It doesn't want to end. And it'll trick you in innumerable ways, make you think that you found the way, and then when you see the despair that is not the way, it'll just select another way for you, keep you busy and distracted from seeing the truth. If you see the truth of what the me actually is, the self is what is, then there may be an ending by simply seeing the truth. There's no conflict in that. There's no conflict in seeing the truth, right? It's just you see it and there's nothing else to do. The seeing of the truth acts, right? When you see the truth, it acts. It doesn't wait. and the act later. It acts, the seeing is the doing. The instant of seeing truth is the instant that action of truth occurs. It's like you know what to do now because you see the truth, and you don't fight the me or the I. You recognize that it is what it actually is, a bundle of memories that has no control over you, and you can be free of its bonds, of its tethers. And then there's beauty, right? And then there's joy. And this is where this all ties together, because there's a joy in being free, right? The joy is not the joy of not fighting anymore, the joy of not always being in the struggle, of always trying to find pleasure and avoid pain or suffering, and that constant battle that we're always fighting, constant pursuit, wanting something we don't have, and then this sense of incompleteness because we don't have it. So always feeling this unsatisfactoriness, right, which is another way of interpreting dukkha, the Buddhist word dukkha, which sometimes is interpreted as suffering, but many people have said it is better to regard as dissatisfaction, because we're dissatisfied when we don't get what we want, or we have something like pain that we don't want. We're dissatisfied. And life is that. It's filled with moments of dissatisfaction because we're always striving for something that we don't have, or that we can't achieve, or you want to be better and improve yourself, but you're not there yet, and so you're dissatisfied because you have not improved yourself sufficiently according to what your brain's metric of that is. Which again, if you didn't measure yourself against other people or measure yourself against an ideal, there would be no becoming, no striving to become better, because you're not measuring yourself anymore against a perfect ideal that you think you should be, whether physically, mentally, or whatever that is. You've stopped trying to become better, because that is also one of our, the me acting, right? I don't like what I am. I see that I'm angry, violent, whatever, fearful, anxious, depressed. Pick your favorite so-called negative emotion, and then say, I want to not be that, so I need to become better. Eliminate those things from me. Which, how are you going to eliminate those things from you? How are you going to end anxiety and end fear, and people will, okay, well, and the latest craze may be through therapy, through Western psychological methods of analysis, Freudian at one point in time, and it's gone through various evolutions of where modern psychology and psychiatry are now, where they think they have all these methods and techniques and drugs that will do this, but it doesn't work. And I hate to bust the bubble again, because it doesn't fully understand the problem. It doesn't fully understand the holistic mind that we are, and it focuses on a part of it, right? A category of diseases, and each disease has its specific treatment. And I mean, I've known people who have taken all sorts of medicines that may provide temporary relief, and that's all it is, though. Temporary relief. It doesn't get to the root of the problem. It's like covering it up. I mean, they used to give people lobotomies, take out portions of their brain, because to try to cure these so-called mental diseases, right? Which, it hasn't been that long since we did this sort of thing. Maybe 100 years ago, a little over that. Maybe not even. And within that time, even modern psychology has changed so much because it hasn't found the truth yet. So it keeps looking around. Well, that didn't work, so let's try another thing. Let's try another thing. Let's try another thing. And one can say, we're learning from our mistakes and we're getting smarter. But this is where, without understanding what the mind really is, that the mind cannot be understood that way, because the mind is a holistic, large thing that cannot be broken into parts and understood by understanding the parts. It can only be understood as a whole. Science doesn't work well with that. Science works with parts, right? It subdivides and breaks things into parts and understands the parts and then tries to assemble those parts into a whole. And you will never understand the whole that way, no matter how many parts you have, no matter how many subdivisions you have. And the mind is very complex, and it cannot be distilled down into a simple set of rules, a simple set of diseases and treatments for those diseases and rules, and then say we're going to fix the mind in that way. And this is another insight to have, to know that is not the way. Right now, this may go on for hundreds of years until people realize, until, one day even scientists realize, what we've been doing, psychologists, isn't working. Fundamentally, people are still afraid, they're still scared, they're still suffering. It hasn't solved the problem. It hasn't solved the problem for the people that I know that are in the system that suffer from, say, various mental issues, but they come in and out of hospitals or in and out of places. If there's no cure, they may take one medicine, then after a while that medicine doesn't work anymore and they switch to another. And it's this endless searching for a cure, searching for some simple, like all you need to do is just take this medicine. It's so simplistic. It doesn't get to the complexity of the problem. The mind can't be solved. Any problems, any disorder in the mind doesn't have such a simple solution. And that's why the only way to understand these disorders is to see them holistically. Again, the word holistic, not as a part, but as a whole human being, and to understand that whole and what's happening. And in the understanding of that truth, then something may happen. And one might say, well, that's hard, I don't know how to do that. And as I said in a previous video, it's just like saying, how do I open my eyes? Right? How do I open my eyes? That's the question. When someone says, how do I see myself? How do I observe myself? I don't understand. What path or method do I need to see myself is almost absurd. It's as absurd to me as saying, how do I see through my eyes? And someone may say, you open your eyes and you'll see. And they're like, yes, but give me a process for opening my eyes. I don't understand. Like, I need a method for opening my eyes. That doesn't make sense to me. It's as silly as that. Just see it. You have the ability to see. You're just not seeing. So it's just like the person that's coming up with a million reasons why they can't open their eyes is what happens with the brain. And I think it's a maybe it's actually a defense mechanism of the brain itself to think that because the brain knows, the self knows, it may not persist, if it may end, right? Death. It may suffer psychological death, and it doesn't want to die. So when someone says, see what the me is, see what it is, and it's so simple, open your eyes and see it. But the me realizes that, and as a defense mechanism says, I can't let that happen, so I have to say, I will do that only when you give me a method for doing that. And immediately it jumps out of what is simple into what has now become hard and complex, and it lives another day that way. It lives another day by tricking you and saying, well, that's fine, I'm willing to open my eyes, but tell me how to open my eyes. I'm not going to open my eyes until you tell me how. And since there is no how do you tell someone how to open their eyes? How many words could you use if somebody has their eyes shut and you want them to open their eyes, other than just saying, open your eyes? You know how to open your eyes. It's not something you don't know how to do. You can open your eyes anytime you want. There's nothing more that needs to be said about it. You just choose not to.